Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to another episode of the Coffee Roaster Warm Sessions podcast. Serge, how's it going?
It's going, dude.
Did you work behind bar today or what?
I did work behind bar today.
How was it?
It was good. It's a fairly chill day.
Nice.
I feel like all this fog and all of the gloomy weather, even though people in Washington, in Bellingham especially, should be totally comfortable with going to a cafe in gloomy weather, but I feel like it's too sleepy right now. People are acting too...
Not many people showed up?
Well, not that. Like, there's like no classic work meetings. There's no hustle and bustle. Like,
Right.
I feel like everyone's on vacation.
Right.
So it was pretty nice. It was quiet.
Nice.
But dealing with some espresso machine issues, though, like flow rate changed between two group heads. So trying to fix that.
Nice.
Craig is supposed to actually, our tech. You know what? Speaking of Craig.
Do you guys get descale in your machine?
Scale. We don't, like, the water that we use is only like 40 ppm. It's the water's fairly soft here. So it's like descaling is like, probably be necessary at some point, but it's not a major concern.
Sometimes flow rate has to do with the
scale buildup.
The scale buildup that is actually in the flow restrictor. It's a part. It's a part, like, it's super small part. Yeah. Right above your group head. Yeah. We had to descale it at the machine that we work on. Yeah. And they use third wave water minerals.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
And so it's actually pretty often. I mean, you'll see the two group heads, even though they're programmed the same pulses, but they'll start drifting. One or the other will start drifting, and then you have to take it apart, throw in some descale solution. But it's like a part, like literally a small little guy.
I mean, the flow rate difference was on group head 1. It was 8.84 was the flow rate per second. So 8 milliliters per second. The other one was 2.68.
Oh yeah. That's a nightmare.
That's a like very big. That's 4 times. One is 4 times quicker than the other.
Yeah. You pretty much can't use that group.
Yeah, I shut it down. I wasn't using it. All of the shots were pulling 3 to 4 seconds longer on that one.
100%.
Yeah. But the good thing is, like, Craig is coming out today. That's another person that I think it would be fun to chat with Craig on the pod.
We should
about
that's a no-brainer. Why haven't we thought about that?
Yeah, about building. He's great. Craig is fun to talk to. About building, like, even like modding espresso machines for home baristas. Actually, I think that would be such a fun conversation.
Actually, I think we should.
Yeah, I'll ask Craig after. He should email me at 4:30. He's great. He's a fun guy. He's also an avid biker. We live, like, for folks who listen to the pod who are not in Bellingham or not in this area who don't know, we live in one of the best places to mountain bike. Galbraith Mountain is considered the coveted, the heaven of mountain bikers. So many people travel from out of state, out of country to just bike Galbraith. Yeah. So, and it also makes sense why we hold so many bike companies are in Bellingham, Yeah,
that's true. So, even though I don't bike, and
we both talked about biking, we never got into it.
I could care less about mountain biking.
It's like,
I'm sure it's fun, but I'm like, I'm gonna preserve my limbs. Totally. I'm trying to protect my body. I'll go for on a road bike. Oh God, did
you scuff my shoes?
Oh, that wasn't me.
Oh no, that's fine. That's
okay.
That's the beauty of these shoes. They clean so easy,
Let's pour some batchy.
Batchy. I gotta tell you, they perfected the spout.
The spout, oh, guys, this is the first batch brew pod brew with the Fellow Aiden, and Sergi noticed pretty much what I noticed. The first thing I noticed about the machine is that the spout is dialed.
They perfected the spout.
It's perfect. It's perfect. It's got great flow rate. Speaking of flow rate, great flow rate. Yeah. It just, I mean, you can do the journey pour, and it's nice, stable. It's great.
Also, like, no drip. You see how clean it is?
Oh yeah, it's phenomenal, literally, and it looks so simple. And I'm like, why can't everybody just
brushed metal? Like, there's no added piece, just very nice brushed metal.
Yeah.
a little bit of a cutout. It almost looks partially handmade. Like,
yeah,
yeah,
it's excellent.
How is the lid sealing on this? That's what I'm curious about.
Oh, it's great. It's
Is it
intense.
turn or do you pull up?
You pull up, but it's like suction because of the heat. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I like this a lot.
But it's not like, again, the spout is exposed, so it's not like you have to click a button. Like if
you also don't have to, like, there's no right way to put or wrong way to put the lid on.
Yeah, I actually didn't think about that. Yeah,
I like that.
It's a little universal, a little easier.
Yeah. Dang. I am curious in how, like, a year down the road, how the seal will hold up. But that's an easy replacement. Yeah, like if they had an easy seal, like, oh, you know.
Actually, you know, that's something we don't talk about in terms of gear-wise in the industry, is with all these new pieces of gear, what's the longevity of them? And literally, I've never heard anybody talk about longevity. Like, we know, like, the Breville machines are great, but you're going to have to swap out the O-rings, you know, sooner or later. Something's going to go, something is going to start working, you know, the solenoid or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, but what about the other machines? Like, yeah, I don't know. I'm just like,
which parts are like better than the other ones? Like, which ones last longer? I don't know. I like that's the other thing is, like, I've had my Fellow kettles for a long time and I've never had an issue with them.
Yeah.
You know,
it's true.
Never. And even though I've modded my Fellow grinder, it's been chill. You know what I mean? So fairly approachable. I think another thing about, like, a coffee equipment, like, that I think about is how easy is it to, like, you know, we talk about Baratza being very easy to swap out parts. Like, how easy is it to swap out parts, especially on bigger commercial equipment? That's one thing, like, I'm curious about.
Yeah. What do you think of the brew?
I mean, I love this coffee. That's one thing. That's like, I just like this coffee in general. It's different than the Breville.
It's a way different drinking experience.
Yeah.
Huge difference.
And honestly, I hate to say this on the pod, but I think I like brews off of this machine more than I like pour overs from a pour steady.
You've only had one brew of this. It's that iconic, or what?
I mean, it's really, really good. It's juicy. It's clear. It's bright. I think there's a few things that you can probably you can grind coarser and add more pulses. That's what I would do. Especially for an Ethiopian coffee. I assume this is Ethiopian coffee.
Yeah, it's our Tukiuti natural. It's a little fresh off roast. It's only 10 days. This is December 2nd.
Yeah.
So it could definitely rest, but yeah, dude, what stuns me, and we'll do a podcast on this later, but what stuns me, my first reaction brewing a handful of batches on it, the juiciness and the clarity and the mouthfeel on it is it's shocking how pleasant and vibrant it is.
Yeah.
Which is so hard to get out of just a batch. Even though I don't know if you'd call this a batch because I'm still using the cone attachment.
What was your dose in?
So that's one of the gimmicks about this machine that I don't like. Yeah. But I had it's not our classic recipe that we have on the Breville.
Okay, gotcha.
We're doing 450, 27 in and 450 out.
That's a big pour over.
It's a 116.5.
Yeah, it's a big pour over.
Sorry, 16.5.
Do 27 in?
Yeah.
Dude, add narrative, we do 25 in for a filter coffee.
Yeah.
It's basically a pour over dose.
But cone shape, the classic, batch brewer cone shape. Where it's
not the V60 cone.
It's got the flat like strip at the bottom, and then it funnels in. But yeah, the juiciness, and I agree. Like, I don't remember the last time. Of course, I've only had the pour steady with the Kalita Wave, which plays a role. Yeah. I've never had actually. Maybe at Olympia, maybe I have had a cone with a Kalita.
Yeah.
With the Pour Steady. But
I think not the Pour Steady, but the Curtis Seraphim. Scott dialed it in at Revolver. Yeah.
But yeah, like the juiciness, the clarity. I mean, this is phenomenal.
Yeah.
And mind you, this is similar results where I'm getting with almost one grind size.
Oh, I see.
I put the grind size in, and I've brewed a Brazilian coffee. I've brewed Ethiopian natural, a Colombian,
for all of those coffees.
All of those coffees. And of course, it's not perfect for all of them, but it's like 80 to 100%.
Yeah. Dude, that's nice. How many pulses are you doing?
This is a recipe I just kind of came up with on the fly. It's a bloom, 2 pulses. And I think my bloom is a 1, 2, 3.
Okay. For how long?
For 45 or 50 seconds.
Yeah, I'd probably push it to a minute.
Yeah. And then my bloom is at one temperature, my pour is at a different temperature. But yeah.
Yeah, that's fairly solid. I'm impressed.
Yeah. Well, we just ran through half of our time on that. So let's we'll circle back on it with another episode, but won't be talking about filter brews, but espresso brews. Some of the common myths, and I feel like, man, especially with Lance's videos, it's like, and Dr. Samuel Smirke, and like coffee, what we thought coffee was about, like so many things are getting debunked. I mean, even
that's a very good way to start the convo.
Even like recently, not long ago, like that debunking, like the whole tamping, how hard you have to tamp. Yeah. Like just those things that felt like the staple of the industry, where it's like, no, you have to tamp this hard, and all of a sudden somebody's like, dude, you can pretty much pat the puck, and and it's like it's crazy. So what's the first one that we're debunking today on the pod?
Well, one thing is, first of all, I'm glad you said that, because a lot of these things are maybe myths is a good word, but another word for this would be misconceptions. And I think a lot of the misconceptions we've had about coffee in general, especially when we're talking about espresso, has to do with the fact that there our knowledge and understanding extraction, especially with people like, Jonathan Gagne, like Dr. Smirk, like Lance, a lot of the folks who have done the research, have done the math, have put the information also on public spaces for like public domain. Like, so those things, that information has helped us understand why some of the things we believed about coffee weren't necessarily accurate. Right. But I think all of these things, like, there's a reason why we believe that. And I think once we'll talk about some common things, but we'll also talk about things like, okay, why did we believe this? Or why was this a common belief in coffee before, and why is it not anymore? Right. So it's not just saying like that was wrong. It's more or less, it's a little deeper than that. Right. And the first one, I think the first one is the classic, crema conversation. It's like for a long time, even in competition back in the day, and I'm talking about back in the day, like people would, pull espresso without scales. They would pull espresso based on feel. It's like, roasting and like smelling the trier and deciding whether the coffee is developed well. Right. Like stuff like that. Like, and I'm not saying like, again, that's right or wrong. I'm saying that was all we knew and all we had. Like before we understood a lot of the things about extraction, it was more like, what does it look like? And that was a classic, like, oh, when we see that, quote unquote blonding, we're gonna stop it. And if the coffee and if the shot has this thick, I remember in one of my first coffee job being trained, the shot has to have a nice thick orange layer on top called crema. Right. And if that shot doesn't have it, that means the shot is a bad shot of espresso. So there was this obsession with seeing that ring around on the top of the espresso beverage, and it guaranteed good flavor, which now we don't. That's not true.
Do barista competitions still require?
Yes, they do evaluate crema.
Wow.
They do.
Okay, so tell me, I know this isn't part of the podcast, but do you know why they still do?
What? Why they that's a good question. I don't remember exactly why they evaluate. So part of that is also, it's not a matter, the level of crema doesn't define the quality of the espresso. I would say that. Mm-hmm. But crema itself is an important aspect of the shot of espresso. It is. Mm-hmm. Like, it's still there. I would never say that a shot with no crema is guaranteed to be good either, in the same way a shot with a lot of crema isn't guaranteed to be a good shot of espresso.
So just because a shot has little to no crema is not any worse, or maybe not even better than a shot with a lot of crema.
Right.
So where's crema coming from, and why is it not just a perfect indicator of a good shot?
Basically what crema is tiny air bubbles, right? So the reason there's even different forms of crema or different colors of crema on each shot is also very dependent on roast level, because what happens in the roasting process, for most people, this might not be news, is that when the coffee is being roasted, it's creating a gas, and that gas in extraction is it's basically creating a reaction. So you have that ring around coffees that have more of that gas and coffees that have less. And obviously in dark roast or medium roasted coffees are going to have more of that gas, because during that roasting process for medium roast is a little more developed, so I had more time to create that. In light roasted coffee, there's a little bit less of that gas. So that's one aspect. The other aspect is you're going to have more or less crema depending on how old the coffee is, or how rested the coffee is, not even old. Mm-hmm. So a shot of espresso a week off a roast is going to have a different level of crema than a shot of espresso 4 weeks off a roast. And we've talked about this a lot, and we might even talk about this even more, is the reality is, just because a coffee is 4 weeks off a roast with less crema doesn't mean it's going to taste worse than a coffee 1 week off a roast with a lot of crema. And most of the time, you and I have always leaned to the fact that a properly rested coffee tastes better.
Yeah.
Right?
In that scenario, actually, a coffee that has less crema is probably actually going to taste better.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, have you tasted crema?
But it's not a rule of thumb, of course.
No, it's not.
I've not tasted crema, no.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I need to.
You shouldn't. Yeah.
I mean, like you said, like it's just gases and oils packed together in a small.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It almost has no taste. But I think there's a fun experiment. Most people have done it, but especially in training, like bar training, I always do the salami shot, right? So I'll pull like first 10 seconds or 10 grams,
right?
Second, third, and I'll separate them in separate cups and have them taste. If you taste that first part with like all that crema in it, that has the most crema, it's not diluted enough in the ratio to the whole beverage, it's more crema than actual liquid, it tastes awful.
Yeah.
I mean, the fact is, like, the shot is under extracted, so it tastes salty, it tastes harsh, it tastes awful. And crema in itself doesn't have much flavor. Now, again, like, does crema make up a shot of espresso? Yeah. Like, that's the obvious part.
Right. And that doesn't mean that we should all start asking baristas for 2 spoons so you can scrape the top.
I've seen people do that.
That's wild. That's wild.
Have you seen people do that?
I've never seen that.
I've seen people do that. Narrative. I've seen people ask for some spoons to scrape the crema off. It's like, whatever floats your boat. I mean, I get it, but I'm not also like saying that that's a guaranteed to make your shot taste
and
better.
And that's the thing. It's like, I think before like we said, like the notion was, if there is no crema, it's probably not good, or the more the better. And that's definitely not the case. I mean, I would 100% say it's not the more the better. That's for sure.
Yeah, exactly.
And so,
especially with the styles of coffees that you and I drink.
Yes.
Like the lighter roasted coffees.
100%.
That's definitely not the case. And even there was a thing that I think Lance did or someone did about like the uglier the shot, actually, like, probably it's gonna taste good. Like, you know, I mean, stuff like that.
So but that's I hope we can finally get away from that, because I still hear that way too often.
I get asked
I still see that way too often on like on like Reddit threads, Facebook. I'm like,
beautiful.
Guys,
look at that crema, just look at that blonding, dude.
Guys, we're done.
Like,
we're done.
Look at that zebra printing or whatever it was called back in the day, dude. It's wild. The wild west. But I guess, like, to wrap that a little segment up, like, the reality is the whole idea, or actually, I'm going to save that for a bit. I think the next bit about this whole crema conversation leads us to talk about the fact of, like, do shots die? Because crema is a gas. I feel like disappear when it sits on bar, right? And then the concept that if a shot sits around for long enough, it's all of a sudden a bad shot. Or how long can a shot sit on bar for it to be bad? So there's a lot about that, because there is something that's happening when a shot of espresso is pulled.
Right.
And after it sits around, oxidation happens.
Right.
And oxidation will change flavor.
Right.
You know, or there's going to be a change in flavor, not oxidation changing, but there's a change in flavor when it oxidizes. So yes, the shot of espresso is changing. And especially if you think about volatile flavors, or you think about those very delicate flavors, they change and they evaporate into the air, because it's a lot of the flavors that you experience in coffee comes through smelling it. And as the coffee cools, it will change.
Yeah.
That's a given. But the definition of a shot dying, is very bad language. The only thing that really dies is your palate if you're trying to freaking drink it at 10 seconds. Like Starbucks had that. Gosh. Starbucks coined this idea of dying shots.
I don't even know, to be honest. I've been in the industry now for like 6-7 years. I don't even know what that means.
A dead shot?
Yeah, like what's that
I literally had a barista ask me, a recent barista asked me, is that true?
I mean, what does it mean?
Means it's not servable, right?
It's I don't you're like, you're right. I don't know. Right? Why are you asking me if I know? It's like what does that even mean? Like I mean,
it doesn't taste as good as it did 10 seconds before. Like Starbucks made a 10-second gap.
I don't.
And supposedly if you put it in water or milk, it doesn't die.
That's
even more confusing.
That's the
it's
weird
alive.
thing. Yeah. That all of a sudden, if you mix it with something else, you've saved its life. But it's like, I don't understand. I literally do not understand.
Honestly, the only thing that dies is your palate when you're trying to drink it 10 seconds after. I did that the other day because I was dialing in coffee at the shop, and I'm like trying to like get the open going. You know, I have 5 to 10 minutes to dial in 2 coffees, and I'm like running around. I took a sip, like literally pulled it into a Gibraltar, stirred it twice and took a sip, dude. Burned the living everything out of my palate, dude.
Yeah.
It's awful. I let all my shots die before I let my palate die.
Right. Actually, this might sound controversial for social media, and I'm going to clip it hard, but shots that are dead taste way better.
Dead shots, dude. Zombie
we
shots.
Need to start a whole new
zombie shots.
We need to start a trend called zombie shots. They're pretty much shots that are dead, but they taste way better than shots that are not dead.
Yeah, totally. And again, to clarify things, like there is a progression in flavor when coffee sits around.
100%. I would say they actually taste better with time.
Yeah, totally. Especially with like,
I let my espresso sit. I let my espresso just sit on the table for.
Yeah. Same. And we'll talk more about this probably even in the filter podcast. But like, I know for a fact, like even for example, Maddie will not drink coffee unless it's almost like room temperature. It just hurts her mouth, and she can't taste anything, which is fairly common to most people. Like you can't taste everything when your coffee is like 170 degrees.
Yeah.
So 100%. letting it quote unquote die is actually a benefit to tasting coffee.
100%.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Last one on the docket for today. 9 bars of espresso. Or pressure. 9 bars of pressure for your espresso.
This is like one, maybe not clearly a quote unquote myth, but I find the more you read generic stuff about coffee, maybe you don't know Lance, maybe you don't know all of the quote unquote smart geeky people about espresso, but you're just reading an article or some kind of forum, and it says like, in order to brew espresso, you need 9 bars of pressure. And I'm saying that because I was completely flabbergasted when I pulled up articles that actually say that. That actually exist on the internet. That's one thing about the fact, like, sometimes when you're scrolling through articles on the internet, look at the date.
Yeah.
Like, just look at when was this published? Like, I found a lot of articles from 2010 to 2015 that were saying some wild stuff. Dude.
Yeah, take that with a grain of salt. Just take it with a grain of salt. That's it. Yeah.
And I think the idea of 9 bars of pressure really comes from like commercial machines, and like that was kind of like stock for the majority. Again, do machines that brew espresso at 9 bars of pressure, do they brew good espresso? Yes. Is it required to brew espresso at 9 bars of pressure? No. And even, again, Lance has a lot of videos on this, but even the fact that there's a video that he did that talked about espresso being brewed from 6 to 9 bars of pressure, and most people can't tell the difference. For me personally, again, like with the decent machines, and with machines that you're able to kind of tweak the pressure from beginning of extraction to the end of extraction, or the flare. Like at home, I brew all of my espresso on the flare.
Right.
I've tasted a lot of shots of espresso that are delicious. Do they taste the same as 9 bars of pressure at the cafe? No, they don't.
Yeah.
But they taste like espresso, and they taste delicious.
Right.
So I think that's my main thing. One of the things, you can interrupt me at any point if you have something to add. I love this convo because one of the things that I like about brewing at lower bars of pressure is that you can control the flow rate. There's a little more give when you brew at lower pressure, and there's a little more give, especially I do pre-infusion on the flare with like about 2 to 3 bars of pressure.
Right.
For like 10, almost like 8 to 10 seconds, and then I ramp up to 9. And then I brew at 9 for majority of the time, and then decrease to about 5. And the reason I do that is it preps the puck in a much better, softer way, where it allows you to create create less channeling. And again, not to be confused with the fact, like I would never say you can completely eliminate channeling, but you can decrease the amount of channeling you have in your espresso by controlling your flow rate. And flow rate is basically the conversation here. It's not necessarily the pressure.
Right. Nice.
All
right. That's a wrap.
Yeah. That was the thing.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things that where we assume that, hey, you have to brew with 9 bars of pressure, and it's even like become like a very big marketing thing. Like, I think if I'm remembering correctly, like if you go on Breville's like machines, they'll say, hey, you can brew this with ramps up to 9 bars of pressure. As a selling point. Which, why is it a selling point? Because we commonly just assumed for a long time that that's an ideal. But you're totally right. Like, you can have really tasty espresso not even close to 9 bars. Like, like sometimes if I'm brewing espresso on my dual boiler, the espresso won't reach 9 bar, and it'll just like come up to like 6, maybe 7. It'll do something finicky. And then you try the shot, and it's like, this is phenomenal. You know what I mean? And so it's not just that, 9-day difference. And especially if you, especially depending on the style of shot you're also brewing. So
the roast level.
Yeah. Right. So if you're using a decent or a lever machine, that's going to be a little different. I mean, if I remember correctly, Lance was saying that, if I remember correctly, like a lever machine, it starts off at 9 bars, but as it's going up, progressing through the shot, your pressure is actually dying. Over time.
Exactly.
I mean, I hate that I just use dying because we're talking about dying shots, but it's just decreasing. It's decreasing. So you're actually having a ramp down almost, which that alone, I mean, if you're listening, there's a good chance you've probably pulled a shot of espresso like that. They taste phenomenal. As opposed to, the commercial La Marzocco machines where you hit the button and it's just like 9 bars the whole shot. And so,
and also that, that little aspect of it, what happens is the wetter the puck and the longer the puck is under pressure or even with water, it's degrading. Like, so the puck itself is like losing strength. So your pressure does quote unquote change, but that's why this is a better the way to talk about this is more or less about flow rate than just simply pressure. Flow rate matters here quite a bit. And then you're right. The type of shot you want to pull if you're trying to do a spro over.
Right.
I mean, is that espresso? I guess maybe not. I mean, I guess,
turbo shots. I mean, or you have, the Slayer mods that people are doing on their Brevels, which just allow you to adjust the pressure. And people are like doing like 15-second pre-infusion at like very small So it's at this point, it's like, be confident that if you're now brewing espresso at 9 bars, or even if you're brewing, a shot of espresso and your gauge is not showing that you're brewing at 9 bars, don't assume that you should toss the shot. It does not mean it's going to be a bad shot. Like you can still get good coffee.
So that's a big one. And I get it. I get why Breville would, post that on their box on the machine. It's because again,
of course,
it's a standard that kind of speaks like this machine has enough pressure like a commercial machine. It's not saying that this machine is able to pull good shots.
Right.
It's the barista pulls good shots, not the machine, right? So this machine can actually like meet the standard that you would desire for in a commercial machine.
Right.
So
there it is, friends. Some common espresso myths debunked right here on the podcast. Thank you so much for listening to another episode of the Coffee Roaster Warm Sessions podcast. And as we always say, remember, reflect. What's good?